Thank you all for joining me for another episode of the Exceptional Business Podcast. You all, this is the first episode of, I guess you could call it the second season of the Exceptional Business Podcast. But if you know anything about me, you know that I am not in the habit of placing a lot of structure to my podcast. I like to do things just as they come and as I feel led to share. And so I was really led to share my client. You can call this a client spotlight, whatever you all want to call it. But I am so excited to bring Katie to the podcast today and talk all about wellness, health, fitness, intuitive eating, and how that plays out in your life, how that plays out into entrepreneurship, into family, and everything else. So, Katie, thank you so much for being here, being a part of the podcast today. I'm so excited to have you here. And I'm going to let Katie introduce herself. But like I was telling her before we got on video, I just think that this episode is going to be so helpful to so many of my clients, so helpful to so many of my teammates and just people in the entrepreneurship or just women in general. So Katie, welcome. How about I hand it to you? You tell us a little bit about what you do, maybe how you got started, and tell us a little bit about your journey.
The loaded podcast question of like, what's your story? It's so many layers to it. But first of all, I'm so excited to be here. I have a podcast as well, but I talk mostly to my client, and so I'm really excited to talk to your clients in the topic of just those who are entrepreneurs and busy because I relate to it so much in my own story. So I really struggled, I guess kind of how I got into this non-diet space really was through my own story. So back in the day when I was studying nutrition, studying to become a registered dietitian and a fitness professional, I found myself really in this black or white, all or nothing mentality. I was exercising so rigid, so many rules around exercise, and felt like, well, if I'm not going to the gym 5, 6, 7 days a week, well, then what's the point? Or if I'm not eating, counting my macros or counting my calories and fitting in this specific box, then I was swinging one way or the other. And so, really, food and fitness, I kind of joke that it was a very much a reflection of the disorder and the chaos in my own life. It
Mhm,
was a way for me to control
mm,
all the other things I felt like I didn't have control over in
mm,
my relationships, in very early years of entrepreneurship. Things were chaotic. And so, in turn, eating and movement felt chaotic as well. And so, fast forward, I took on some different clinical roles. I worked in everything from managing people who had tube feedings to working in hospitals with people who were getting ready to have bariatric weight loss surgery, GI issues. I even spent some time as a metabolic dietitian. So I know we probably have some moms listening. When your newborn baby is born, they get little finger prick or on their toe or finger. I can't remember which it is. And the blood spot gets sent to the hospital, to the lab. So I worked for the lab in Indiana where we would get all of those newborn screens. And I would be the dietitian to call if the child was diagnosed with an inborn error of metabolism, let's say PKU, you might have heard of, or all sorts of different disorders where they can't break down protein or carbohydrates, or depending of how they're able to break down those macronutrients, something that they were born with. So really quite the wide spectrum, and kind of how this ties in to entrepreneurship. Really what I found myself was kind of straddling the line between going all in and really embracing how I knew that I could best support people in this lens, and not having the confidence in myself. And I think a lot of that really showed up in my eating patterns. And when I, finally discovered intuitive eating and felt more understanding and kind of had some healing in my own relationship with food and fitness, it's funny how the timing happens, but I think that is really when I was able to take the full leap into entrepreneurship, step into some, new roles. I worked as a people maybe have heard of Orange Theory Fitness. I used to work for their international team and I would travel around the world. It's crazy to even say out loud because it definitely was my dream job for a little bit in that season.
Yeah.
But I think if I didn't struggle with food and fitness the way I did, if I didn't heal that relationship and do some of that deeper work, I would have never been able to tackle some of the major things in my career because now I'm at a point where food and fitness is just such a piece of what I do. I don't overthink it. It's just, for lack of better terms, intuitive that it allows me to show up in my business in other opportunities because I have the headspace, because I have the physical energy to do the things that I want to do. So what
So
do I do now? I didn't even answer that question. So now I have a private practice based out of Indianapolis, Indiana, where I support clients both one on one and small group in really healing their relationship with food and fitness as well.
and for the listeners, before you branched out into entrepreneurship, what exactly did you do? So you were in Orange Theory. You also dealt with what was the primary, I guess, like what did you go to school for, or where did you end up like prior to you going into entrepreneurship?
So there were kind of two different seasons. I've always had a kind of a side business or a side hustle ever since gosh, college, I think. My friend Lauren, she and I started businesses. We were those two girls in college who we didn't understand why nobody else understood us, but we were the ones listening to podcasts, reading the books, really trying to learn marketing and social media on the side. And so I guess that's kind of where my entrepreneur journey start. But as I became a registered dietitian,
Yeah.
I was working in the hospitals and kind of worked some different full-time roles. There was a time in 2020 where I did take the full leap into entrepreneurship for about a year or so, working for myself in private practice. And then I went to Orange Theory for a couple of years and entrepreneurship was still happening, but kind of on the back burner to pursue that new opportunity. And really, gosh, I went back full time for myself in April of this year.
Mhm. Does entrepreneurship look like you thought it would? Has your business transformed like over the years? I know, like for me, when I first got started, I really just wanted to replace my salary at the IRS. I just wanted to be able to stay at home with my kids. And I just wanted to be able to make enough to like make ends meet. And now that I look at my business, it's not exactly how I pictured it to be. Have you pivoted over the years, or is it exactly like how you envisioned it, like even back in 2020 when you decided to like jump out into entrepreneurship?
I love that you asked that because I think I am unique in that, yes. And I have to kind of pinch myself and remind me that, wow, I am actually living what I wrote down pen to paper,
Wow.
back in 2015 as a young, just kind of figuring it out. But I really envisioned that I would have my own private practice in a physical gym space setting and
Mhm.
doing a combination of teaching group fitness and also supporting people with nutrition in a one-on-one private setting. Now, what's funny you asked that, right? Because the first time that I went full time into private practice,
Yeah.
it wasn't this vision. And I
Mm.
learned a lot. I've learned so much over, gosh, the past decade or so. I've learned a lot and had to pivot a lot to get to this point. But
Mm.
am I exactly where I wanted to be or things exactly? No. On paper, kind of yes, but it's been a lot of different routes and learning lessons to get here, not exactly the path that I had envisioned.
Yeah, I hear you on that. When you were first talking about like your journey, so I would say, and you tell me your thoughts to this, I would say that, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's like an ignorance to it. So that's why I'm asking. So, like for you, you were on the spectrum where a part of your fitness and your journey and the chaos that you talked about was all kind of rooted. And we know that carries forward into all different areas and facets in our life. But would you say that, like, for you, you overworked out and you over dieted? And in general, people are underworking out and under dieting. Or in your eyes as a dietitian, what do you see? Because from my lens, and I guess not really being in that space, I guess I just look at it like most people are under dieting and under like they're struggling with that. But like for you, maybe in your eyes, like all you see the spectrum on your end and you see the spectrum on the other side. What are your thoughts to that?
I see the spectrum for sure, and I think
Spectrum,
really
yeah.
what it boils down to is people are so disconnected from their bodies. They're so disconnected and they're so overwhelmed by all the information out there about the quote unquote perfect or right way to eat, the right way to move, that they fall to one extreme or the other, right? They're
Yeah.
kind of all in and maybe, doing too much, right?
Yeah.
They're taking every single information as verbatim as truth and applying it to the extreme until they burn out. Or on the flip side, and I see this kind of come in ebbs and flows through, one person might experience both ends of that spectrum where it's overwhelming and they almost get paralyzed by decision fatigue of I don't even know what to do. So I'm just going to throw my hands in the air and say, whatever. I don't know what to choose, so I'm just gonna kind of take it day by day.
Yeah. Would you say there is like a lack of awareness? Like we could be doing it unconsciously, whether that be overeating or undereating. It's a unconscious awareness that we are not aware that we could be doing. That's also a part of it. Is that what I hear you say?
Yes, and especially for busy entrepreneurs, what I find is that they're the go-getters, right? They're the
Yeah.
I'm gonna pack in as much as I can in a short amount of time, and they are the type of people who will just power through Zoom call after call and jump from this to that. Realize it's 2:30 in the afternoon, "Oh my goodness, I haven't eaten anything today." Right?
Yeah.
And then swinging to maybe that chaotic eating or just not even having, like I said, the brain power to make a conscious decision about what to eat.
Yeah. On your website, and you all, I'll drop the links for Katie's website, her podcast, and her other resources that she'll share with us. But Katie talks a lot about intuitive eating. And so, Katie, I would love for you to introduce this ideology of the intuitive eating philosophy and maybe what are some misconceptions people may have about intuitive eating. How do you guide your clients away from this mindset? How do you get started with teaching someone the ideology of intuitive? So, one thing before you answer that, I feel like for me, I definitely am the business owner who may forget to eat, who may work through lunch, who may intentionally not eat breakfast. Coffee may be breakfast for me. I feel like that has been a journey over the years. So I think you all like adding my context to this. I'm also just very interested in learning from Katie about how to heal this stuff because people used to say, like, and I don't know, this could be true or not, but people used to say, well, this thing runs in my family, like high blood pressure that runs in my family, diabetes that runs in my family. But the eating, I think, is a big piece to that that's generationally kind of being passed down as well. And not to say there's not some DNA component in there. I don't know, Katie, but I'm just curious. And so when you talk about the intuitive eating philosophy, like for people who just feel lost about just eating, their weight, and just their health. Can you explain to us what that is and how you implement that like within your practice?
Yeah, intuitive eating, it sounds dramatic, but it really did completely change the approach that I took personally. I basically started doing intuitive eating. I started listening to my body and getting really in tune with what felt right to me and cutting out all the noise around me. And then I discovered, oh, there's actually research that supports this way of eating. So, intuitive eating, I best describe it, it's a self care framework, it's a self care model of eating. And so, it's learning to make decisions around food and movement that align with your personal values, right? Maybe you are a business owner and you value your business, you value work. Maybe you're a mom and you value convenience and time with your family.
Yeah.
Maybe hypertension or diabetes does run in your family. So you value avoiding that specific type of disease. And so it's really learning to figure out what feels right for me so that I can take that nutrition information, all the things I read and hear on the internet and life, and I can filter it in a lens that applies to me versus just taking something that someone else says as truth and knowing how to go, this applies to me, this doesn't, so that
Mhm.
you can make decisions that feel best to you, right? Because you're the expert at your own body. Yes, I have a degree in nutrition and fitness and I know a lot, but I'm not you. You are the only one who knows what feels best in your body. You're the expert. And so it's helping people get reconnected with that and really understand what are my hunger and fullness cues? What type of
Mm.
exercise do I enjoy doing? How do I handle my emotions or how do I handle stress? Do I avoid eating? Do I use food as a tool? It's really looking at someone, the whole picture, the big piece of the puzzle versus just, I think a lot of the messaging that we receive as consumers is that you just have to change what goes in and what goes out. Change, what you eat and change how much you move. And the reality is it's not that simple
Yeah.
because, like you said, we all have our own experiences around food. We all have our own experiences in our body. And so it's learning to celebrate those, lean into it versus just letting the external tell us what to do.
Yeah. What does it look for somebody to work with you, or how does someone even realize? Because I think a lot of people don't think about hiring a dietitian or somebody that can come in and help you with your food and your lifestyle. So, what do you say to people who may not even realize that they need something like this and they may just be doing like quick fixes or things that are maybe even damaging to them. But maybe they just need support because there's some things I've realized like I just need help with. I can't do it by myself. Like I need the support of someone else to come and help me. So, at what point does someone get to you? I mean, of course, obviously, there's probably a ton of people who may need you that may not even realize that they do. What does that typically look like for you, like in your practice?
I would say most people come to me seeking weight loss. They get to a point in their journey where, and a lot of them are, really successful, high achieving entrepreneurs. They work in a corporate type setting or on their own and are feeling really frustrated because they recognize I'm awesome. I can achieve all these amazing things in business. I've raised kids. Like I've any sort of goal, check,
Yeah,
check, check. I've got it figured out. But when it comes to this piece or my body, why can't I figure it out? Why am I not feeling confident when I step into a room? Why am I getting so frustrated and stuck and overwhelmed by the scale? And so a lot of people come to me seeking weight loss. But what's interesting is that when we really peel back the layers, we ultimately end up putting weight loss on the back burner. And that's not to say you can't want to change your body, but it's we're not putting that at the forefront of our brain because weight is not a behavior, right? We can't change that number, but what we can change is our mindset
yeah.
around food and
Hmm.
movement and all those things. What we can change are actual how often we're eating, the composition of our meals, the types of movement that we're engaging in. And so it's really helping someone to lean into the activities and the behaviors that feel good and getting rid of that all or nothing kind of diet mentality, start and stop, and learning the habits, the skills, the behaviors that they can then take with them through any season of life. If you go on vacation, you have kids, like it doesn't matter because you know your body and what feels best.
That's a really good one though, because for me, I'm a mom of three. And Katie, I find that they're much more hungrier than me. They really want to eat all throughout the day, they want to snack. And a byproduct of that is I snack, or I may feel like I need to eat off of what they're eating. For moms like that, or even like you had me thinking when you were talking, when we talk about behaviors of food, what about for the people, or what would you say to someone that they're eating simply because it brings them joy? And like, okay, maybe I'm saying it wrong, but like basically when they wake up, they think about, "Ooh, what is something good I can eat today?" The eating is a part of the pleasure for the day. And when they think about dieting, well, so that's the mindset that I'm guessing that you teach. And through that, a byproduct of those that help will automatically allow them to change in the way that they think about that. But what I've learned from or seen from people around me is food is very much so a source of pleasure. And so the idea of eating something that may not be as something that they're used to eating, maybe more on the healthier scale, they are not as happy with that. So I think you're right in that. I think you have to change the mindset, right? Because if you don't change the mindset about the food, then that person is always going to look at whatever that healthier choice is as not that source of pleasure, and they're going to always
Mhm.
have that cycle. So, like, what do you think about that?
Yes, I love that you brought that up because that's a huge common misconception about intuitive eating is that, well, if you're saying I can just eat whatever I want, right? If I can eat food for pleasure, a lot of people assume, well, then I'm just going to eat Doritos and cupcakes all day because that's what I want. If I listen to what my body wants, I'm going to
Yeah,
want this all day. But, I think back to the first time you said I love you to your partner. What did that feel like?
it felt great.
It felt great, like, you probably had some butterflies and you're
Yeah,
nervous, like, exciting, right? It was just
yeah,
the honeymoon phase,
right.
and now what's it like?
It's just like my new
It
normal. It's like
Yeah, it's like,
normalized.
I appreciate it,
Yeah,
it's really nice, I still appreciate
yeah.
it,
But you know,
but
I
it
love you. You
doesn't
know, I don't
have
have
that
you, right?
same Yeah, it doesn't have that same it's not as flashy and shiny and new, and so what we find, and the research supports this as well, is that when you get to a point where you can put all food as neutral, your body is going to want, a salad every now and then. You're going to be able to eat to the point that feels good and, quote unquote cravings
Mhm.
kind of go away because you're not restricting things. And oftentimes that restriction, whether it's the physical restriction or it's the mental, I should, the shoulds, the bad, good and bad, that mental restriction, once that goes away, you're really able to just what we find is a lot of people eat actually a lot more variety of fruits and vegetables, whole grains, and a lot more. The research shows us as well that variety and moderation is really what supports overall well-being, body, mind, spirit.
Yeah, that's good. Another thing I was thinking about was it sounds almost like what you also do is take people through a healing journey, because I would imagine that food is closely tied to the way your family eats, generational cultures, and things like that, which can or may not be healthy, right? And you have to
Mhm,
unlearn certain things about your life in order to make it better. And a lot of times, people, they come to me, and a lot of their concern is, I want to save money in taxes, or I want to figure out how to make more money in my business. There are some people who will spend money on business education, will spend money on all these things. But I think if you're not healthy, I don't want to say like healthy, I don't want to misconstrue that. But if there are things that you may be struggling with, I think, like, how can we get to a place where we normalize hiring someone or working with someone that can help us with this stuff is allowing us to have chronic issues. It's allowing us to impose, even pass these things on to our children as well. It's a chronic these can be chronic issues that we see generationally within our families. And particularly, I've seen it in my family. I know there's other people that are listening that sees it in their family as well. So it's like, at what point and do you see like, oh, you see when you need to purchase a like sign up for a business coach. You see when it's time to invest in that. You see when it's time to invest in like all
Mhm.
of these things, but it's like to me, what you do is very much so closely tied to almost like something in the mental health space because a lot of this stuff that we're
Mhm.
dealing with, it's more than just weight. It's also, it sounds like weight. And that right there is just, it just seems more like much more complex, Katie.
It's much more complex, and, I love that you brought that up, that example, right? People come to you, "Well, I just wanna make more money," and they think you're
Yeah,
just gonna flip a switch and it's gonna happen, right? But what you actually learn is like, no, 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 there's a lot more that's tied to money. There's
yeah,
there's a lot more we unpeel, peel back when we peel back the layers. And the same happens with nutrition. And for many years, actually early on in my entrepreneurship journey, is I was really struggling with that because, well, people are wanting weight loss and why can't I just give this to them? And it wasn't until I finally realized, oh, no, I need much, much deeper than 15-minute conversations. I can help people to surface things, but we're not actually getting to the root issue of whatever it is they're struggling with their food and fitness. Because I found that if I can help people really get to the root, if I can help and sit beside them and ask them those hard questions and hold that space for them to figure it out, the nutrition stuff is easy. Most people can identify, then it's just you're taking in information and there's not as much weeds underneath, right? So it's getting to the root issue so that my ultimate goal for people is that they get to a point where they're like, "Oh, I don't need you anymore. Like, I don't need you. I don't need another diet program. I don't need any of that anymore." Like, because I feel confident in making decisions around food.
yeah. Tell me about your services. Tell me how people work with you. What does that look like?
So I do a 12-week intuitive eating program. And what that means is you become the expert at your own body so that you can feel confident making those decisions around food. So we meet one on one every other week because I believe that there's power in the consistency. You know that you're showing up with someone, you do your homework. It's okay, I'm going to keep this at the forefront of my mind because I know I'm going to see my dietitian again. I know we're going to talk about it
Yeah.
because there's so many experiences around food. And we work together for 12 weeks because I found that's really the sweet spot where people get to the point and they either go, okay, yes, I've got some tools in my toolbox. I can do this on my own. Or some people go, ooh, it's a little more tangled up there than I thought it was. I have a lot more to unlearn around food in my body than I thought. And then maybe we move to monthly sessions. But what's great about working with a dietitian compared to just a nutritionist out in the street is I can actually bill insurance. And so a lot of my clients can get
Wow.
unlimited sessions covered for free. And so, there's not that sense of we have to be done, we have to finish because their
Yeah.
insurance covers their sessions and we meet every week or every other week. Very much almost like nutrition therapy in a sense.
Wow. I think that's absolutely amazing. And I think something that a lot of entrepreneurs would probably be interested in having, or business or women in general. So, for the most part, Katie, you work with women. Is that
Yes, I work with everyone, but I'd probably say it's like 95% women.
okay? All right. So, I have
Guys are not immune to the issues as well. So I definitely like if there's guys listening, yes, I work with men as well.
okay, so Katie, now tell me as a dietitian, fitness professional, business owner, tell me about your work-life balance. How do you personally find a balance, avoid burnout? We're in a season where there's just a lot of burnout, there's a lot of just economic uncertainty. So just tell me like what self practices or self-care practices you have Like, how do you stay grounded? Give us some tips on what that looks like for you as a dietitian, fitness professional, and business owner wrapped up in one.
I really try to practice what I preach, but also disclaimer, I am human. I also have a 16-month-old, and as you know, sleep, it evolves, and every day it's like just when you figure it out, it changes. So on a good day, I get up and I try to carve out some time for my own workout. Maybe it's 20 minutes, maybe it's 45 minutes, maybe it's an hour. It really just depends. But that early morning time for me is sacred because I'm usually listening to something, I'm learning something, I'm reading something, or it's complete silence and I'm just having some brain space to kind of get sorted and get myself some clarity for the day. And then what I've really been leaning into this season is having margin, because what I found in the past that has led me to burnout is I can just cram everything in, and
Oh,
really trying to give myself margin so that I am able to eat lunch. I am able to think about what are we going to eat for dinner this week, and
wow.
not put those basic self-care items like eating, like moving my body, like managing stress, trying to really build those in
That's
so
good.
that they don't fall to the bottom, because as moms, as business owners, right, we put everything first and it's so easy just let that stuff fall. But what I do in my schedule is I try to put that into my calendar first
Yeah.
and then fill in the work stuff after. It's like what's really important, because I know that when I am taking care of myself, when I'm sleeping enough, when I'm, reading things that I enjoy, when I'm spending time with friends, I'm able to then show up as a better business owner, as a better mom, and that I kind of let that overflow into the other areas of my life.
Yeah. That's really good, Katie. I was actually talking to another client and we were just talking about sometimes you can just be on autopilot doing like all the things. And maybe if you just slow down, you could see things that could be, I guess, impacting you, but also that thing is pouring over into every other facet of your life, and just the importance of intentionality is just so crucial. So even like your sacred time and how you get up, how does even someone get to that point where they can get up and just think about working out? Some people get up and they still feel tired or that they didn't sleep enough. And so if anyone is listening to this and you can resonate with some of the things that I'm saying, you all should reach out to Katie. I think that we don't talk enough about the health and wellness space and how that affects us as entrepreneurs and as women, and how that affects us in so many ways, from the perspective of being a wife, the perspective of being a mother, on top of a business owner, on top of taking care of yourself. And I know for me, I have 3 kids, my husband, and it is not easy. I am always feeling like I'm running on autopilot. And I've
Mhm.
had to intentionally decide to slow down because you just cannot pour from an empty cup. And if you can't take care of yourself, how can you care for others? Go ahead, Katie.
Well, I think it all comes back to what you said as well, recognizing we can't do everything, and I know that's been a big learning curve for me, is recognizing my capacity and really stepping back and going, "Okay, where can I delegate? Okay, if I can't afford to hire on someone else on my team, can I outsource my laundry?" So
That's
they
it.
have it's like one less thing I have to worry about. Can I outsource getting my house cleaned once a
Yeah.
month? It doesn't have to be big, but going back to how can I give myself more margin? You can start with some of those household things, and maybe delegating doesn't even mean paying somebody. Maybe it means you're asking a family member to watch the kids for an hour or 2 hours during a week, but we struggle with asking for help so much because as entrepreneurs, we wanna do it all. We wanna have the control, but the more that you can learn that letting go of some of that, like done is better than perfect, you can actually get some time back in a sense.
Yeah. All right. So Katie, for people struggling with body image issues, just feeling stuck, maybe in a cycle of restriction, what advice would you give them to start breaking free?
Oh, I where do we begin with that one? To start breaking free, I think start by taking inventory. Like until we have the awareness of some of our habits, of some of our behaviors. So for some people, that might look like journaling what
Mhm,
you eat and not from a diety, I have to track everything obsessively, but just say, oh, wow, okay, I noticed that I wake up and I have a headache. I've never even realized that has become my autopilot. Let
mhm,
me get curious about that. Or I
mhm,
realize, wow, I wake up and I just drink coffee and I'm actually not nourishing myself with food
mm,
until middle of the day. Wow, and I noticed that right around 10 o'clock, I am, like, tanking and I'm reaching for, like, a 2nd, 3rd cup of coffee.
mm.
Okay, just starting to build that awareness, and then once you have that awareness, what things just really stick out to you and prioritize from there. Baby steps consistently will make huge progress.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me of this book that I read called The Slight Edge. And it just talks about how in life, everything is comprised of these little baby steps. And people think that 0 to 100, it takes so much. But really, it's just the little bitty things that add up to what you're trying to accomplish. Any books you recommend or anything else that you want to share with us? Anything like that?
Some of my favorite books, of course, the Bible, AKA Intuitive Eating, like,
Yeah.
this actual book, the Bible of Intuitive Eating, it's called Intuitive Eating, it's by Evelyn Tribbley and Elise Resch. It's a
Okay.
pretty easy read, it goes over the 10 principles of intuitive eating, and I think is a really great place for people to start.
Okay.
That's a great one. Another great one talking about unlearning is called Anti-Diet by Christy Harrison. Christy Harrison also has a really great book called The Wellness Trap, which I
Mm,
think is applicable to the current season that we're in, where it feels like now it's not even just food and fitness. We're seeing all sorts of cortisol levels and all these like higher level terms being thrown at us, cold plunging and saunas, and like it
yeah.
feels like we have to do everything. The wellness trap really talks about now it's not even just weight loss culture, it's the wellness culture
Oh my
that's making us
gosh.
feel like we have to do everything. She does a phenomenal job debunking a lot of that. And then the last one resource I'll leave you with is another podcast because those are podcast listeners. It's called Maintenance Phase.
Mm,
And they are hilarious. They are vulgar. So disclaimer there, like there's a lot if that's not your thing. But they break down a lot of the science
okay.
about different topics in a way that's educational and also just kind of makes you really think and open your eyes, and it's educational and you laugh, which I love.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Those are some amazing resources. So, Katie, do you think, in your opinion, like food and fitness, does it go hand in hand? Do you feel like there's one that's more important than the other? Or do you feel like they're equally important that you equally have to focus on?
From a maintaining a health maintenance standpoint, I definitely think nutrition holds greater. However, I think from the mental aspects, like I think fitness gives us that edge. I
Yeah.
think there's so much more to fitness that we don't realize there's a physical aspect, but especially for entrepreneurs, it's so much of the mental. It gives you that creativity. It gives you that space to think. And I think it builds in kind of that time for you. Whereas nutrition, we all have to eat. Like we have to eat. It's something we really can't get around, but you can work on them hand in hand. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can do both in a way that's sustainable and doable.
All right, you all. I am so happy that we were able to chat today with Katie, and I really encourage you all. You all are worthy. Everyone that's listening to this podcast is worthy. And when we think about scaling our businesses, we think about, oh, I'm going to get a cleaner. I'm going to get laundry, all of those things. Let a dietitian be a part of that. Like if you feel like you're struggling and you need a second, you need support in the sense of even if you attend therapy or any other type of practices that is for your mind, body, and spirit. Let's start normalizing reaching out to people that can also help us with that because even though it appears to look easy, there's a lot of mental things that to me it's very deep rooted. And so I really wanted to bring Katie on the podcast because I believe that so many women can benefit from her services. Insurance is accepted, and she has really beautiful programs that will really help as you are trying to change your way of life, whether it is from under eating to overeating and just, as she said, intuitive eating. Katie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Any last words, any other things you want to share? Of course, I'll have some show notes for Katie on how you all can reach out to her, including her podcast, so that you can follow her journey and learn more about all of her educational resources and things that she provides. But, Katie, any last things that you want to share with us before we end this episode?
The last thing I think I want people to really just take away is trust yourself. Like, trust that you know the right answers, like that your body can be trusted. And if you're feeling really disconnected, I guarantee there probably was a point in your life where you felt really good in your body. And just know that it's possible to get to that place again. So that's just what I want people to feel: empowered with their health versus overwhelmed. Like, it, it doesn't have to be overwhelming. But
Mm,
thanks so much for having me. I like I said, I could talk about this forever. Hence why I have my own podcast, because so much to talk about.
well, tell them real quick. I'll also put in the show notes. How can people find you? Where do you want people to find you?
I love to hang out on Instagram. My Instagram is at KT Hake. You can also go to my website, katiehake.com. I've got all sorts of resources there as well to, again, bite size, make nutrition and fitness fun.
All right, you all. Thank you for listening to ETS's podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode.